It's time for another WrestlePlanet news update, as Ric Flair has responded to the Dark Side of the Ring allegations, Tommy Dreamer has been pulled from Busted Open Radio, and in lighter news, Bryan Danielson has issued a heartwarming statement to WWE. We've got just the 4 stories in today's video, as some of the quotes are pretty long, but let's get into the first one, this coming from across the Pacific Ocean. New Japan Pro-Wrestling is currently in the midst of their annual G1 Climax 31 tournament, but now one of the top stars on the roster has been ruled out of the rest of the competition. Tetsuya Naito sustained meniscus and MCL injuries in his opening match against Zack Sabre Jr., who he lost to. There will be no replacement for the fallen star, instead the rest of his matches in the A block will be counted as a loss via forfeit, with each of his opponents receiving 2 points. To fill the space for the missing matches, the rest of the block will each have a special match that won't count towards the standings. Last week, shockwaves were sent through the wrestling world following the release of the latest episode of Dark Side of the Ring, which covered the infamous plane ride from hell. Many fans unaware of the story were taken aback by the allegations made against WWE Hall of Famer Ric Flair, who was accused of cornering a flight attendant and forcing her to touch him. Flair has now responded to the claims and released a statement on his Twitter page which reads, "Every person that I've worked with, from my lawyer to my publicist to my friends, have said not to post a response, but I've never run from the past behaviours before, and I'm not going to start now. I want to clarify a few things. About 4 years ago, I gave ESPN full access to my life for a 30 for 30 special. They covered taxes, financial issues, adultery, divorces, the passing of my child, and drinking/partying at length." Rory Camp, desperate to matter for another 15 minutes, did an interview about it this morning. When Rory's lips are moving, he's typically lying, but one part of what he said was the God's honest truth. And he goes on to quote Carp, which reads, "I'd never heard that he forced someone to touch his genitals. Everything with Rick that was construed as negative I tried to address in the 30 for 30. His drinking, his philandering, his adultery, his money problems, there's quite a bit, but never, at least in the people that I spoke to, no one ever brought up that he would force himself onto somebody." Rick would then continue in his own words, "I allowed my personal life and lives of my wife and children to be turned upside down for one reason. Whether it's good or bad, even the bad, the truth has to matter, even in wrestling. My issues have been well documented over my 40+ year career. The impact of drinking too much, which nearly killed me 5 years ago, has been told time and time and time again. The reason Rory, or anyone else for that matter, never heard stories of me forcing myself onto anyone is simple: it never happened." This does seem like a strange statement to post using the words of somebody that he has called a liar as an alibi, and I don't think it necessarily rules out the incident just because one person hasn't heard the story. Flair would then release a further statement which was obtained by Wrestling Inc., where Flair addresses his helicopter incidents, which involves, well, let's just read the statement. Flair would add, "To clarify, the helicopter, as it was called, is accurate. I wish I could blame it on youth, but it was a case of drinking too much and being inappropriate, and I apologise for that, and have countless times over the years. I made some bad decisions during dark periods in my life, and it is something I've spent a significant part of years I was given by the doctors in 2017 trying to make right. I condemn sexual assault in any way, shape or form. I could and have written books, as have others, that have covered my transgressions. I've made some terrible decisions, but I've never forced myself on anyone in any way, period." And I don't really think there's much more we can say on this matter, and I think it's down to individuals to come to their own conclusions, although there has been further repercussions for somebody that appeared in the documentary whose comments upset a number of people. So with that said, before we get to our final, more positive story, we have an update on the Tommy Dreamer situation, who made some very insensitive comments on the aforementioned Dark Side of the Ring episode. Dreamer would play off Flair's actions as a quote joke, and it just being Flair being Flair. His Busted Open Radio co-host Dave LaGreca took to the airwaves to reveal his thoughts on what Tommy had to say, declaring that the former ECW star will be off the show until further notice. He stated that what he said was out of character, but refused to defend Dreamer's words and said, I felt that I needed to start off today's show to talk about a few different things. I'm still quite frankly shocked by what Tommy said. I think that was definitely out of character of the Tommy that I know, who has been hosting this show for a few years now. And I can't and will not defend the comments because they're indefensible. Quite frankly, the things Tommy said, Tommy effed up on Thursday. And what he said is insensitive and it won't be tolerated. LaGreca would go on to talk about why the comments upset him so much, and he said, "A lot of people say, well, in 2021 you can't say this, it doesn't matter if it's 2021, 1998, 1985, it doesn't matter. As a father, as a husband, knowing my daughter now has turned 18 and she's about to go into the world, is going to start college soon and is now working. These are things that I worry about for my own family, and people have had to worry about this for years, and there's just no place for it, there really isn't." I agree that there's absolutely no excuse for what Dreamer said, and as somebody that considered myself a fan, it is very disappointing to hear his views on the issue, and even his close friends seem to agree. The accusations, whether you believe them or not, can by no means be excused as a joke, and an on-screen gimmick is not an excuse to act that way in real life. And finally, Bryan Danielson has today posted a statement of his own, this time concerning a much more positive topic. Bryan is set to wrestle his first match in AEW when he takes on Kenny Omega in front of a company record attendance in the Arthur Ashe Stadium. Bryan would post his statement to the Players Tribune website where he spoke ahead of his first non-WWE match in over 10 years, and he said, "Tomorrow night feels like the biggest match of my career. In a lot of ways, it doesn't seem real. It's against a dream opponent in Kenny Omega, who I've watched grow and become one of the best wrestlers in the world over the last several years. It's taking place in a dream setting, the first wrestling show at Arthur Ashe Stadium. It's happening in a groundbreaking promotion, AEW, a company that's modernizing wrestling and gives fans their first true alternative in a long time. And it's my first match outside of WWE in over 10 years. It feels like a brand new chapter. I couldn't be more excited. What a world." Bryan would continue by saying there's something he needs to say before fully moving on from WWE, and he added, "But if I'm honest, excited is only part of what I'm feeling right now. Life has a way of being a little more complicated than that, you know? So as I approach this moment before this next part of my career gets fully underway, there's something I need to express. Thank you, WWE." Bryan would go on to thank his former colleagues and those that worked behind the scenes in the company before thanking Vince McMahon indirectly, although his name wasn't specifically mentioned, and he added, "Thank you to the big man who I know hates to be acknowledged. I won't say much, but thank you for the conversations, the life lessons about both what to do and what not to do, and the best hug I've ever received. I wish more people could see you how I see you." Bryan then went on to thank WWE fans for joining him on his journey so far, with the fans no doubt playing a big part in the success that he achieved, and he added, "At last, but certainly not least, thank you to the WWE fans. You pushed my career to new heights that I never would have reached for on my own. Thank you for cheering me enthusiastically into the main event of WrestleMania 30, and thank you for booing me vociferously against Kofi at WrestleMania 35. Thank you for crying with me when I was forced to retire, and thank you for celebrating with me when I was cleared to compete. Thank you for hijacking that show in Seattle, the last time my dad ever got to see me wrestle." He signed his first autograph that night, Buddy Danielson, Daniel Bryan's dad. "Thank you for the moments that I will never forget, moments where I can just close my eyes and feel the goosebumps all over again." Bryan would then invite the WWE fanbase to join him on his next adventure and would further express his gratitude, and he said, "I hope you will continue to follow me in AEW, but I completely understand if you don't. You've given me more than enough, more than I could ever repay. Thank you for all of it. I love my time in WWE, needless to say it changed my life. I met my wife, had unbelievable experiences and made great friends. Some of you I may see again, and I hope that I do, but these last 2 years have taught us not to take that for granted. So I just wanted to tell you all how much you've meant to me. I'm grateful that you allowed me into your lives and that you came into mine. I'll cherish these memories forever. Thank you for reading, and most of all, thank you for caring. Sincerely, Bryan Danielson." This post shows what a true class act Bryan Danielson is, leaving his former workplace with his head held high, with nothing but respect and gratitude for the opportunities that he's been given. Bryan now moves on to what he calls the biggest match of his career so far tomorrow night at AEW Dynamite Grand Slam, where he takes on AEW World Champion Kenny Omega in a non-title match. Whilst there's no belt on the line, this is a moment that will go down in wrestling history as we head towards the ultimate dream match that we never thought possible. And before you go, why not check out my video where I discuss 10 wrestlers that would be perfect members of the Elite.